how to avoid self-isolation. I want you to understand that for you to be isolated, you must have originated into a certain grouping or organization or a certain people whom you have been joined together. After you do what we call self-isolation, they reject you, they expel you, then you become alone. And those kind of groups that we are talking about can be family group, because you belong to a certain family. We belong to a certain family or a clan, whereby we are accountable to a certain leader who can be a father or a mother based on the family, based on the setup of the family. You can also belong to a church where you have got your pastor, you have got your leader in church or an elder based on the policies of that church, or a mosque if you're Muslim. There is leadership in that mosque. There is also political parties. Maybe you belong to a certain political grouping. Maybe you belong to a certain union or a school or welfare or chamas or a certain employment, or you're in certain employment, certain employer. You also belong to a certain neighborhood where you stay. There is neighbors. And we are looking about how to avoid isolations, because in one way or the other you belong to a two to three different organization or grouping that you belong to. You may be from a certain family, which is true, you all come from a certain family, and but you go to a certain church, you also become a member of that church or a leader of that church. You are, if you're politicians, you belong to a certain political group, political party. If you are in union, you belong to a certain union. Today we are looking about how to avoid self-isolations in those organizations that you have committed yourself to, that you already belong to. And we make mistakes in this life by isolating ourselves to the grouping that we have been set apart to belong to govern them, to lead them, to be partaker, to be of influence, to be of help and assistance in those organizations. In one way or another, we isolate ourselves for the mandate given to us. At the end of isolation, we suffer. Therefore, today we are looking about how you can avoid such kind of isolation. I have seen certain people who belong to a certain family isolating themselves. They denounce their father and mother, and they say they are not their parent. They go away and they disregard them. At the end of it, there is suffering. A person who isolates himself will always meet a consequence if the thing that made that person to isolate himself or herself was not genuine. If it was genuine, then I know that there is another way that God may also guide or protect that person based on the decisions, based on what have made this person isolate himself. Remember, when a lion wants to attack a buffalo or wants to kill, it will always isolate one of the weak and then kill and then eat that animal. Therefore, when we get isolated, this is a period whereby the enemy is targeting us. And therefore, today we are looking at the way we should avoid isolating ourselves to enable us ensure that we are safeguarded, we are protected. Look at a scenario whereby a person is employed in a certain company. That person does not talk to the fellow employee. That person does not say hi to them, does not relate to them, does not respect them, does not coordinate with them. That person become alone in that organization. And therefore, if he or she requires something, or require to be helped or to be assisted, or requires certain advice from that organization, he or she cannot approach any person, because he or she has already isolated herself or himself. Therefore, isolation does not work good for us. It works negative for us. Let us look at the characters that lead to self-isolation. Characters that lead to self-isolation. There's one thing that causes people to isolate themselves. There's mischievous character that make people to isolate themselves, or rather, some behaviors that people do to make them isolate themselves, knowingly or without knowing. One of them is sadness and being irritated. There are some people who are quick to anger. If they are in a family, they are discussing something. If they're in a political meeting, if they're in an employment meeting, whenever an issue is raised and they are not happy of it, they become angry, they become sad, they become irritated, they become unhappy, and therefore what will follow, they are likely to talk rude, they are likely to abuse, they are likely to talk ill, they are likely to disown the grouping and reject them. And in the end, they isolate themselves. So isolation can be done, or rather, whatever causes people to get isolated, one of them is sadness and being irritated. You need to control your sadness, you need to control your anger, you need to control what causes you to misbehave in a manner that you have to be irritated. You need to be simple and gentle. Therefore, sadness will cause you to do, or rather to make wrong decisions. And when you make those wrong decisions, you may take time and then discover the decision you made was wrong. By the time you are going to come back to that organization, to that grouping, or to that organization that you belong to, you are likely to have suffered in the end. Therefore, avoid sadness, avoid being irritated anyhow, and ensure that you are gentle. When you ensure you are gentle, you're going to remain in that group and enjoy the fruitfulness of the grouping The purposes of the grouping and the purposes of us belonging to a certain group is to strengthen us, is to equip us, is to make us better. And whenever we remove ourselves from those organizations and grouping, we become weak. Therefore, in this life, avoid becoming weak. Ensure you belong to a certain grouping. Number two, of another character that lead to self-isolation is what you call pride and failing to humble. There are some people who are not humble. They are always proud. They are always proud. They don't humble themselves, and therefore whatever issue is being raised, whatever advice is required of them, they do not provide because they are boastful. Avoid being proud. Be humble. Be gentle, and you are going to remain in that organization. You enjoy the respect from others, and whenever issue arises that you need people to assist you, you'll be accorded comfortably, and you're also going to remain strong. Whenever you isolate yourself, you become weak. Whenever you isolate yourself from other grouping, from other union, you always become weak, because unity is strength. Another thing that cause people to do self-isolation is what we call unfaithfulness. You belong to a certain employment. You are employed there. You're supposed to be faithful to your employer in terms of work relationship you have been granted, the assignment you have been given, the objective you have been given that to be carrying on in that company. If you are told to do this, ensure you conduct that. If you are told this is your duty, do them diligently, do them with faithfulness, do them in a proper way. But remember, the things that can cause you to be isolated in that company is you becoming unfaithful, failing to work in the right time that will be given to you, the time you're supposed to report, the time you're supposed to close. Ensure you are faithful in everything in that employment. And when you become faithful, you're not likely to be isolated in that company. People get isolated that in the company where they are being employed by being sacked, being expelled, suspended. And when they are expelled and suspended, they go without pay, they go without income. In the process, they suffer financially. Therefore, avoid being unfaithful in workplaces, avoid being unfaithful in marriage, avoid being unfaithful in the union, in government organization that you belong to, in the political party that you belong to. Avoid being unfaithful in that family that you belong to, in that school that you are employed to teach, in that school that you are a parent. Ensure you remain faithful to what other parent has passed and decided. Ensure that you remain faithful to the code of conduct pertaining to a professionalism, to avoid to a profession, that pertain to a profession, that pertain to the calling you are called to. That church, be faithful to the procedures, to the rules of that church, to your faith, the faith you have in God. Ensure you are always faithful, and when you become faithful, you grow strong. When you become unfaithful, you become isolated, and when you become isolated, what you follow is suffering. Avoid being self-isolated. Number four of the things that cause people to be isolated is criminal characters. Some people are criminal in nature. others have made themselves criminal, others have doing a character that are closer to a criminal, that are closer to other criminals do. Whenever these people do that, whenever these people conduct themselves in a criminal way, they become isolated. Take an example of that man that belonged to a certain family, and the man decided to be a robber. And when he decided to be a robber, the family members now disown the son. They say, now we are not going to accept this as our son. He is destroying our dignity, our image in the society. We have disowned, and whatever danger he faces, we will not support. And this person, when he become isolated, become arrested because of his criminal act, the family members may not assist him accordingly. There is likelihood they may abandon this person, and whenever this person is being abandoned, he is likely to suffer. Isolation leads to suffer. Avoid being isolated. Ensure you enjoy a good and a strong ties to the place where you belong to. Ensure that you respect the institutions that you belong to. Another thing that causes people to have self-isolation, which is very dangerous in life, is what you call dissatisfaction. Whatever decision is made by church, whatever that you belong, whatever decision that's made to a church that you belong, whatever decision that is made by the family that you belong, whatever decision that is made to a political party, whatever decision that is made by the union that you belong to, you are always not satisfied. You always reason out different from others. You never agree with others. You need to work on that, because if it leads to isolation, you are likely to get into more trouble, because isolation will make you weak. When you are isolated by this grouping and they reject you, you are going to suffer because they will not support you. Therefore, be dissatisfied. It may not be simple for you to be satisfied, but always try to reason out to them. Always give your opinion and let them help you. Listen to the ideas. Try to accommodate them, because you need, or rather you are needed in that grouping. And number 6 that cause people to do self-isolation is mischievous character. Some people misbehave in certain organization. They misbehave in their grouping that they belong to. They misbehave in their families, in churches. They misbehave in mosque. They misbehave wherever they are. They misbehave in those chamas, in those meetings, in those wherever they go. They go there, they are drunkard. They go there, they talk rude. They go there with their dressing code is expelling them from this grouping or from this meeting. Therefore, those mischievous character, whereby people are not controlling their character, where people have mischaracter, lead to self-isolation. Take a case whereby a drunkard person join a political meeting where leaders are talking, or he joined a school meeting where parents are discussing about the welfare of the school. That person who is a drunkard start abusing the group, start abusing the parents, the teachers. The person will be picked by the security officers and removed from the meeting. He become isolated. We are therefore requested to ensure that our character are in order for us to remain in our grouping. The other thing that causes people to have self-isolation is failing to take time before joining our group. Some of our group that we belong to are a group that we have made ourselves. Leave about the family. Family we cannot choose. We found ourselves in a family. But other groupings, we make decisions. Before you join that union, you made decision. Before you join that chama, you made decision. Before you join that political party, you made decision. Before you join that employment, you made decision. Sometimes we fail to take time to make proper decisions, and we find ourselves in a long path, in a long grouping, in a long organization. Therefore, we get a hard time in the process of adhering to the rules pertaining to those grouping. Therefore, for us to avoid self-isolation is to ensure that we take time before making critical decisions that pertain us to join a certain grouping or a certain organization. You need it to be somebody who take time, or somebody who is wise in those kind of decisions that you make. When one and join another group without taking time, and then realize that it's a long grouping, that person has to do isolation. In the process of isolating himself or herself, may do harm in the process. Number 8, overconfidence. Overconfidence is another issue that lead to self isolation. Some people have overconfidence. They don't need other people. They don't need other men of God. They don't need other people. They don't need to join those organizations. They don't need to join Chama. They don't need to join those political parties. They feel they can do it alone, and therefore they become isolated. In the process, they become weak. Because unity is strength. They lose that strength. They lose that authority. They lose that power to proceed. Others, they join those group, but whenever they're in those group, they don't cooperate with them because they have overconfidence. They believe their point must be taken and should not ignored. In that capacity, bring dissatisfaction in that organization. Avoid overconfidence. Always give a room of change. Always give a room of change. And this will help you a lot. This will increase you a lot. This will help you to be able to proceed, because people believe in strengthening themselves. If you go there, you are strong. It therefore means that you don't need to be strengthened by another person. You don't need to be equipped by another person. You already know. You already have the material. You already have the strength. You have a confidence. Therefore, you have a challenge in agreeing with them. Therefore, it is important for you to note that agreeing with them is very, very important. I wanted to finish there. And as I finish, we have checked about how to avoid self-isolation. How to avoid self-isolation. It is important to understand that God made us to belong to a certain group. God made us that we belong to a certain place, a certain organization, a certain neighborhood, and therefore it is important to live in unity with them. It is important to live in unity, in agreement to the people to the group that God has set you to be with them. Ensure you belong to that group and avoid self-isolation, but encourage unity, encourage oneness, encourage togetherness, encourage boldness, encourage the power of unity. The thing can cause you, we have looked in summary, the things that cause you to isolate yourself is sadness or being irritated. 2, pride and failing to harbor. 3, unfaithfulness. 4, criminal character. 5, dissatisfaction. 6, mischievous character. 7, failing to take time before joining into a group. 8, overconfidence. And therefore, if you avoid these things, you are likely to remain in those grouping. And when you remain those grouping, there is more growth in it. Remember, for you to be weak, you must be isolated. For the lion to kill a buffalo, it must isolate the weak one. It must isolate one. And whenever they isolate one, even if that one was strong, it become weak. And then it become a kill for them. Therefore, unity is strength. There is the rule of the devil: divide and rule. Avoid being divided. Ensure you remain in unity. Kindly consider subscribing so that you continue receiving other interesting channel like this. You are blessed.